"She's blocking the driveway again," my neighbor whispered over the fence. I barely glanced up from polishing my black Porsche. Karen was standing in the street, phone in hand, snapping pictures of my car like it was contraband. A few minutes later, she marched up the gravel path and slapped a paper on my front gate. "This vehicle is not permitted on HOA property," she announced loud enough for the whole street to hear. I folded the rag in my hand, trying to keep my tone even. "Karen, this isn't HOA land. My driveway is part of my parcel. You can't tell me where to park my own car." She sneered. "I called the enforcement team. You'll be fined, and they'll tow it if you don't move it in an hour." I almost laughed. "Enforcement team?" Her smile tightened. "You'll find out soon enough." She turned and stumped off like a general after issuing an order. I shook my head, but a knot settled in my stomach. 20 minutes later, a white pickup with flashing yellow lights rolled up. 2 men in dark tactical vests jumped out. One had a badge clipped to his chest, but it looked off, too shiny, too new. "Sir, we're with HOA police," the taller one said. "We need the keys to your Porsche. It's being impounded for code violation." Karen was across the street, arms crossed, grinning like she'd already won. I stepped off the porch slowly. "HOA police, that's not a real thing." "Ma'am reported the car stolen," the shorter man added, tugging at his vest. "We have authority to seize it." Something inside me went cold. A false stolen car report was serious business. I kept my face calm. "You boys carry real badges?" The tall one flashed his again quick, hoping I wouldn't look too close. The emblem was crooked, definitely fake. "Step aside," he ordered. "We're taking it." I let a slow smile spread across my face. "You sure you want to do that?" Karen shouted from across the street. "Just tow it already!" The shorter man moved toward the Porsche, pulling a Slim Jim from his pocket. That was enough. I reached into my jacket and quietly flipped my wallet open, revealing a worn gold U.S. Marshal's badge. "Before you touch that door," I said softly, "you might want to check who you're stealing from." Both men froze like they'd stepped on ice. Karen stopped mid-smirk, her mouth slightly open. The taller one stammered. "Wait, you're a—" "U.S. Marshal," I cut in, my voice sharp now. "And you two just tried to seize federal property under a fake report." Karen's face drained of color. The 2 so-called cops exchanged a look, and I could see panic in their eyes. I didn't move, just kept my badge visible and my stare locked on them, letting the silence hang heavy as the sirens of a real patrol car started to echo faintly down the street. The wail of the sirens grew louder, bouncing off the houses like a warning bell. Karen's confident stance crumbled. She stepped back, clutching her phone to her chest. The fake cops didn't wait for introductions. The tall one shoved his Slim Jim back into his vest, mumbling, "We were just following orders," while the short one kept glancing toward the street corner as if measuring how fast they could run. I didn't blink. "Don't even think about moving," I said, my voice low but carrying enough weight to freeze them in place. Karen suddenly shouted, "This is harassment! I called them because your car is illegal here!" Her voice cracked on the last word. "Illegal?" I raised an eyebrow. "On my own property? You filed a stolen car report for a car you knew was mine. That's a felony, Karen." Her face twisted. I was told the HOA has authority over all vehicles parked outside." I stepped toward her, keeping my tone calm but firm. "HOA doesn't outrank federal law. You're about to learn that the hard way." A real sheriff's cruiser screeched to a stop in front of my driveway. Deputy Miller stepped out, an old hunting buddy of mine. He eyed the 2 men in vests. "What's going on here?" Karen jumped in first. "Officer, arrest him! He's threatening us and refuses to move that car! It violates HOA Code 14! Miller ignored her and looked at me. "Marshal Carter, what's this about?" I nodded toward the fake cops. "These 2 tried to impound my Porsche with phony badges and a fake stolen car report."
Miller's expression darkened. "Is that true?" He stepped toward them, hand resting on his holster. The tall one raised both hands slightly. "We were just hired by her HOA president to enforce parking regulations. We didn't mean no harm." Karen's voice trembled now. "They told me they were licensed officers. I thought—" I cut her off. "You knew exactly what you were doing. You called them to steal my car." Miller signaled his partner to cuff the two men. As the clink of metal echoed in the quiet street, Karen backed up another step. I turned to Miller. "I've got security footage of them on my porch and near the car. Want me to send it to your office?" "Do it," he said. "That'll seal the charges. Attempted grand theft auto, impersonating law enforcement." He shook his head. "It's going to be a long night for these boys." Karen's eyes darted around like a trapped animal. "You can't arrest me! I didn't touch the car!" I stepped closer, my voice steady. "You filed the false report. You set this up. That makes you an accomplice." Her mouth opened, but before she could respond, another police SUV pulled up and an officer stepped out with a clipboard. He spoke directly to Karen. "Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us for questioning." For the first time since I'd moved here, Karen didn't have a single word to say. As they led her to the SUV, she shot me a look that was half fury, half fear. I didn't gloat, I just watched her go, knowing this wasn't over. Something told me Karen hadn't acted alone, and the real trouble was still hiding behind her HOA president.
The next morning, the street was eerily quiet. No Karen pacing the sidewalk, no neighbors pretending to water their lawns just to spy on us. But I wasn't fooled. Quiet in this neighborhood never lasted long. I was sipping my coffee on the porch when my phone buzzed. It was Deputy Miller. "Carter," he said without preamble, "you're gonna want to hear this. We ran the two guys from last night. Both have priors for fraud. One has a suspended security license. Guess who bailed them out this morning?" I didn't need to guess. "Let me guess. The HOA president." There was a pause on the line. "Yeah, name's Harold Vickerson. He showed up with a lawyer before we even finished booking them. Something about your Porsche violating community harmony." I set the coffee down. "Harmony, huh? Sounds more like organized theft." Miller lowered his voice. "Be careful. I think they're trying to push you out. Karen's just the face they use. Vickerson's pulling the strings." I hung up and stared across the cul-de-sac at the HOA office, an overly polished brick building that didn't fit the old ranch-style homes around it. An hour later, my Porsche's alarm went off. I rushed outside, heart pounding, but the car was untouched. Sitting on the hood, weighed down by a rock, was a bright yellow envelope. Notice of community violation. Final warning. Underneath the bold letters was a scribbled note in pen. "Sell the car or lose the house." I crumpled the paper in my fist. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I decided to pay the HOA office a visit. The glass door was locked, but inside I saw Vickerson hunched over a desk, Karen sitting across from him with her arms folded. She spotted me and stiffened. Vickerson looked up and smiled. Too wide, too smooth. He came to the door but didn't unlock it. "Marshal Carter," he said without preamble, "you're trespassing. HOA business hours are over." I stayed calm. "You sent men with fake badges to steal my car. That's not HOA business. That's a crime." His smile didn't falter. "Those men misunderstood their instructions. We were merely enforcing community code." Karen muttered something I couldn't hear, but her face gave her away. She looked nervous, like she wanted to leave. Vickerson leaned closer to the glass. "Sell the Porsche, Carter. You'll save yourself a lot of trouble." I held his gaze for a long moment. "You just threatened a U.S. Marshal. I hope you realize what that means." He stepped back, still smiling. "We'll see who's really in charge here." The blinds snapped shut. As I walked back home in the dark, I felt the weight of my badge in my pocket. They weren't just after the car. They were trying to drive me out completely, and I had a feeling they weren't done playing dirty. That night, I checked my security cameras again. Around midnight, the motion sensor blinked. Someone was lurking near the side gate. The figure moved too fast for the camera to catch a clear face, but it wasn't Karen. This one was taller, broader, and carrying some. I slipped on my jacket and stepped out quietly, staying in the shadows. The figure was kneeling by my side gate, fumbling with something metallic. I could hear the faint click of tools on the lock. "Step away from the gate," I said, my voice sharp and steady. The figure jerked up, startled, then bolted toward the back fence. I sprinted after him, my boots crunching on gravel. He was fast, but the ground was uneven, and he stumbled just enough for me to tackle him. We hit the dirt hard. I pinned his arm behind his back. "Drop the crowbar," I growled. He thrashed once, then went still when he felt the cold steel of my badge press against his cheek. "You're making a big mistake," I told him. The porch light flicked on. My neighbor Pete had heard the commotion. "You need help?" he called out, holding up a baseball bat. "I've got it handled," I replied, hauling the intruder to his feet. His ski mask had slipped, revealing a scar across his jawline. Not one of the men from last night. Someone new. I dragged him to the porch and dialed Miller. "Got another one for you," I said when he answered. By the time the deputies arrived, Karen was standing across the street in her bathrobe, pretending she'd just woken up. Her eyes widened when she saw the man in cuffs. Miller shined his flashlight on the crowbar and the wire cutters we found in the guy's pocket. "Looks like attempted break-in. He's not one of the two we booked yesterday. This is getting deeper, Carter." The intruder refused to talk, just kept glaring at me as they shoved him into the cruiser. I turned to Karen. "You might want to tell your boss that sending thugs in the middle of the night isn't going to work out for him." She shook her head quickly. "I don't know anything about this," she insisted, but her voice trembled. Miller looked at her. "Funny, he had the HOA office address in his phone's GPS. We'll see what he has to say down at the station." Karen went pale and backed away, mumbling something about needing a lawyer. Over the next 2 days, the investigation unraveled everything. The man I caught at the gate confessed that Vickerson had hired him to plant contraband in my garage, something they could later use to get me arrested and force me to sell the property. The county sheriff's office executed a search warrant on the HOA building. They found files detailing plans to seize several properties in the neighborhood through false code violations and forged citations. Karen turned on Vickerson fast, trading her testimony for leniency. She admitted the fake cops, the false stolen car report, even the threat note on my Porsche. All of it was part of Vickerson's scheme. When they led Vickerson in handcuffs, neighbors gathered on the sidewalks. The man who once strutted around giving orders now kept his eyes on the ground as reporters shouted questions. Karen avoided my eyes when she passed by in the patrol car, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Miller clapped me on the shoulder. "You just saved this whole street from a real crook." I nodded toward my Porsche, parked in the driveway under the morning sun. All I wanted was to be left alone on my own land. He chuckled. "Guess they picked the wrong guy to mess with." I watched as the sheriff's convoy disappeared down the road, carrying away the people who thought they owned the neighborhood. For the first time since I moved in, the street felt quiet for the right reasons. I locked the gate, patted the hood of the Porsche, and thought to myself, I didn't fight to uphold the law just to let anyone take my home or my car. Justice had its day, and this time it stayed parked right where it belonged.